Hey guys, welcome back to more Reddit malicious compliance stories. In this Ripestories video, my CEO replaced my entire department with his 23-year-old mistress. She refused my training, told me to stay out of her way, and he put it in writing, "Do not interfere." So I maliciously complied with his demands and pandemonium erupted. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, "I did not know he was the CEO," posted on r/MaliciousCompliance. One of my very first jobs was at a factory doing floor care in the office areas after they closed for a day. Sweeping, mopping, stripping and waxing, the whole works. One night I was working alone in a hallway near the main lobby, just mopping my little heart out, and I heard footsteps approaching. And well, I had signs up, but I could tell these guys were deeply engrossed in a folder and discussing something. I really did not want them to fall, so I called out, "Please be careful, gentlemen. The floors are wet and a bit slick." The guys were about even with me now, looked up, made eye contact and laughed before responding, "Oh, we are hardly gentlemen, don't call us that." Without missing a beat or even thinking about it, I responded just as they walked past me, "If you say so, ladies, have a good night." The two burst out in hysterics, thanked me for the laugh, and continued upstairs to the conference room. Shortly after, my boss came running down the steps. Apparently he had seen the interaction from the second floor. His eyes were wide and he said, "Why would you say that?" Me, "I don't know. They said they were not gentlemen and to not call them that. So ladies was the first thing to come to my mind." Anyway, that is how I called the CEO and president of the nationally recognized corporation ladies on their way to a meeting. And by the way guys, if you enjoy malicious compliance stories, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because I post these kinds of stories daily. Anyway, the next one is the title story, which is titled, "CEO replaced my department with his mistress. Biggest mistake of his life." So for some backstory first, I was a general troubleshooter for my company. My job involved a lot of traveling to different clients that we support. My area of work is Ontario, Canada, where I am based out of, and some of the nearby states in the US like New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, Pennsylvania and so on. I did most of my traveling by car, since my schedule can change quite quickly and flying can become very expensive. I had one colleague who is technically my subordinate, but we have a very good working relationship and would often handle calls independently of each other and only checking in by phone once a week and in person once a month or when necessary. A little over a year ago, I get an email calling me to the head office in New York City for a meeting with the CEO and the board of directors regarding my job. I check with my colleague and he got the same email. So we make our travel plans and meet in New York City the following week. We have dinner together the night before our meeting, and I cannot figure out between us what the issue is about. It's rare to get someone to the head office, and more rare for things to be so vague. When we go into the meeting the next day, we are informed that the company is dividing our department between the US and Canada, and that there would be a new person to deal with the US clients, and we were to restrict ourselves to Canada only. Both my colleague and I were a little shocked at this, since neither of us had even heard about this being discussed. I asked who the new person for the US was, and we then learned that it was a new hire that the CEO had taken a special interest in. Trying to be of good spirit, I offered to train the new person. There are many realities of the job that are not in the job description. The CEO accepted and then brought in the new hire. In walks a young lady who looks about 23 years old and wears an expression that she knows everything. She sits at the table and immediately makes it very clear that she wants nothing to do with us. The CEO is Bob, the new hire is Karen, and my colleague is Jim. Bob: "Welcome Karen, we have just informed OP and Jim about the change in structure and they are willing to give you the support you need to get yourself started." Karen and Bob both look at me. Me: "Glad to have you on board, Karen. I think both Jim and I have a lot of experience to share with you, and we are happy to do so. Perhaps it would be better in a separate meeting so we don't take the board's time, huh?" Karen: "Thank you all. I have a lot of ideas about how I can streamline our department and new policies I can introduce that should save the company a lot of money in expenses." I'm very confused at that point. Karen here is speaking as though she is my supervisor, and that is distinctly not what Bob spoke to us about. I can see some of the board members giving strange looks at this as well. Me: "Bob, perhaps I misunderstood the new roles here. Would you please clarify?" Bob: "Sure, Karen is the new head of your department, and both you and Jim will answer directly to her." Board member: "That is not what we discussed or approved as a board. We were not fully convinced of dividing the department, but this is completely against what we discussed." Karen: What did you discuss then? Board member, that your department would be divided between the US and Canada. OP and Jim would remain north of the border, and you would run the US. That's not what I was told, but I can work with that, as long as these two stay out of my way. Indicating me and Jim. Jim and I are both shocked and insulted to be spoken of in this manner. We are both very good at our jobs, and before today have never seen this woman in our lives. Bob, that settles it, OP. Effective immediately, you and Jim are to have nothing to do with Karen. Don't interfere with her work at all. You are both to restrict yourselves to working within Canada only. With that, he ended the meeting and left the room with Karen close behind him. Jim and I sat there stunned for a moment, and some of the board members came up to us to express their shock and sympathies about this. I had enough presence of mind to ask if we could get a written directive of this change, and was assured that we would. Sure enough, both Jim and I got emails with the new directive from Bob by the end of the day. So after sending an email to all our US-based clients advising them of the change and giving them the contact info of Karen, Jim and I made our way back to Toronto and reorganized ourselves for working within Ontario only. This meant much less traveling for us, so it gave us more room to breathe. Within a week, I was getting complaints from our US-based clients that Karen was not answering emails and missing appointments. I forwarded these emails to Karen and copied the entire board, including Bob. Another week later, I get a phone call from Karen, who sounds frantic but will not admit that she needs help. She makes pleasant conversation and then asks how I would handle a particular type of situation. I tell her I'm really not interested in discussing work, as that might be seen as interfering in her work. Later that evening, I get a call from Jim telling me he had the same conversation with Karen and handled it the same way, and by the end of that month, I get a call from Bob asking if I will take over the entire department again. I politely tell him no, since I didn't want to interfere with Karen and her role. For the next 3 months, I'm getting emails and phone calls from US clients asking if they can have me back as their contact. This confirms an idea that had been in my head. Jim and I had actually grown our client base in Ontario since restricting ourselves here, so I had lunch with Jim one day and asked him if he wanted to go into business with me as partners, starting our own consulting firm. We could not provide everything our current company provided, but we could provide a high degree of professionalism for our specific field, and it seemed we had a ready-made client base already. So by the end of the lunch, he was on board and we started the necessary steps to get ourselves set up. As soon as we were clear, we both submitted our resignations with explanations of why. The next time clients contacted us, we told them we no longer worked for the company, and when they asked if we still worked in the field, we told them we had established our own firm and what services we offered. A month later, we had 60% of our US clients on board, and since the former company had no Canadian support at all, we had 80% of the Canadian clients. Within 2 months, we had 80% of the US and 90% of the Canadian clients. In the year since that time, our new company has grown enough that we have hired 7 new consultants. Jim and I find ourselves doing more office work than road work and a lot of client courting. Our old company has had to stop offering the in-person troubleshooting, which is what our department did, and Bob was fired by the board. I have no idea what happened to Karen though. Update to the story: because of interest expressed in the comments, I made a phone call to one of the board members I remained on friendly terms with, and here are some answers to questions you guys had. How did Karen get the job? Well, apparently Bob had set up a business school scholarship out of his own money, which had put something like 6 or 7 students through business school. Karen was the latest graduate, and Bob wanted to give her a start in the business world. Was Bob sleeping with Karen? No clear answer was given, but Bob's wife divorced him shortly after he was fired from the company. Make of that what you will. What happened to Karen? Well, apparently she got a job as a middle management in a financial services company. Hopefully she can still build a life for herself and had learned some important lessons. What happened to Bob? Well, last I heard he was a regional director for a large hotel chain. Hopefully he also lands on his feet. Everyone deserves a chance to make a life for themselves. Some questioned why the board was there for this meeting. I honestly don't know, and neither did the board member I spoke with. It was one of their regularly scheduled meetings and Bob added things to the agenda. Some people here questioned my use of non-compete, saying it's not nice, and well, it's a normal reality in the business world. The oddity is that my old company didn't have one. The non-compete I have my employees sign is not overly burdensome. It protects our intellectual property and professional contacts. It does not in any way restrict the employee's ability to work in the field. That being said though, Jim and I have both agreed that if an employee leaves us on good terms and reasonably asks to be released from the non-compete, we would oblige. Some inquired if we are still hiring. Unfortunately we are not. We are taking a pause from expansion right now as Jim's wife is dealing with cancer. I don't want Jim to worry about the office while taking care of his wife, so we have decided to maintain our size, which I can do with minimal input from him, until his wife is in remission and he has a chance to rest and return his attention more fully to our company. Jim and I treat each other like family, so this is a natural step for us. And yeah guys, what can I say, this Bob boss guy literally gave OP a direct order which was backed up in writing to completely ignore the Mistress Karen, and OP simply followed his instructions to the exact letter. But if you ask me, the craziest part of this story, to me at least, is the board of directors really just sitting there while the CEO goes completely rogue and essentially ruins the company. The fact that they let Bob completely restructure a profitable department on a whim without a prior vote or anything shows how deeply dysfunctional that company was from the top down already. I would say that OP got out at the exact right time before the whole ship sank. Props to OP for building his own company afterwards. And yeah guys, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today and whether you still enjoy the malicious compliance stories. The next one is another MC story, which is titled "Woke up the CEO at midnight because manager told me to. He was not happy." So for context, I was working IT for Safeway Corporate. Throughout the day, employees can submit for tech support by either calling the number or sending an email. As we were mostly a call center, the emails, called web tickets, would back up as everyone was busy on the phone. They would nominate a few agents to jump off the phones and call out on these emails we got. The average person would do 20 to 40 by the end of their shift. I got assigned to a special group assisting other tech specialists with telephony engineering issues, aka phones that don't work. We needed someone to work the night shift to help the night guys. I gladly volunteered. We got maybe 3 calls a night and that was for general tech support. I helped with maybe one thing a week. My manager asked why I wasn't very busy at night and I told him all stores are closed except those in Hawaii and we just don't have the same volume of calls. He tells me he wants to see me work web tickets at night. So I work a few web tickets from 10 to 11 and when I show up and a few more from 5 to 6, but don't have much success as night as morning stock crews want to put product on the shelves, not reboot a printer that is probably already working just fine. My manager calls me in and is saying that everyone works significantly more web tickets than I do and he wants to see my numbers go up. I explained to him that the majority of the tickets are for stores that are closed or for our corporate office in California where executives are sleeping. He says he does not want any excuses, so that night I call all 200 tickets. It is not difficult and doesn't take long because no one answers, and I leave the typical voicemail explaining why I called and to please give us a call back. Then the next morning my manager calls me in a fury. Apparently high-level corporate executives called my manager personally wanting to know why they were getting woken up in the middle of the night by tech support. My manager asks, "Did you call these people just to prove a point?" I could have said many things like, "Just following orders, sir, just doing my job, what did you expect, do you know how dumb you look?" But instead I simply replied, "Yep." And his reply, "Well played." He no longer expected me to do web tickets at night. Update to the story: for all those asking, his "well played" came with a smile that said, "I understand we are playing a game here and now it is my move." And yeah, Ed seemed like a really cool manager for a while. He would swap D&D stories with me, he would joke around and seemed like my kind of boss, someone who could be lighthearted and serious enough to get stuff done. That is my style. I'm a hard worker and top performer who likes to crack jokes to coworkers but build rapport with customers. Before the story above, I had asked Ed to place me on a special project as my numbers were through the roof and I wanted a challenge to break up the day. Boy was I in luck. That day upper management asked if they could downsize the telephony engineers and break down what they do into a script for employees to follow. He added me to this initiative as 3 to 4 telephony engineers were fired. Everyone over there wanted the project to fail because if we succeeded we would just justify letting them go. After a few weeks of this, the head of all IT, my boss's boss's boss, was walking around asking how the merger was going. Everyone was singing praises and false lies about our progress. Truth is, we were doomed. I was the only one who told him, "It is not working and it's gonna fail, but if you give me 30 minutes of your time in a meeting, I can tell you exactly how to fix this." Luckily for me, this guy worked his way to the top and understood that lowly people like me could have valuable input. In the meeting, I explained that those in the department wanted us to fail because it justified firing them, and we cannot just boil engineering degrees into scripts. My solution was simple: give me unrestricted access to speak with each engineer separately. I will ask them every single scenario on the books and off the books to fix anything telephone related. I will create scripts for all the basic troubleshooting and develop a procedure to transfer complex issues to a smaller team of engineers we can keep on board instead of letting them all go. He loved it, and he placed me in charge of the project and gave me everything I asked for. During this time, I was solely dedicated to the project, and Ed would ask me to do regular service desk stuff, like I would politely decline and let him know the project deadline was approaching and the big boss is expecting things of me. It did not sit well with Ed that I was slipping out of his grasp. When the telephony team moved me to nights, I was even more out of Ed's grasp, and if he wanted to meet with me, he had to come in early, and that is when the web ticket story starts. So after the web ticket story, see above, Ed decided that he would swap me out with another employee. I'd finished all my policy writing and script typing, so the big boss was no longer watching over me. Ed informed me that he was immediately swapping me with another employee. In his words, "You're gonna sit back at your desk and take calls like a regular employee." Seems like a normal sentence, but he added an inflection as if I thought I was better than everyone else. I called a meeting with his boss to explain that we just were not seeing eye to eye. There's more to the story, but here's not the time. Ed and I butted heads on a lot of things. His boss sympathized with me and told me not to worry. The position I temporarily held was going to be solidified in 30 minutes to make it where I no longer worked under Ed but worked under his boss's boss. I immediately let her know that I was taken off that position and it was handed to a new guy. Her face sunk. What? I didn't know about this. Because the switch taking place was tied to a position, not a person, it made it where the new guy got the new role. Because of big corporations, there was nothing to do, gears were turning and they could not easily rewind. I did not mind too much. I went back to doing my job and getting top numbers. Ed wanted me to grind out calls all day, but his leads, authority below him but above me, saw that everyone did 19 web tickets a day and I would do anywhere from 40 to 90. So they would ask me to work on web tickets full time. Ed demanded I stop doing this and take calls. I shrug and say, "Sure thing, boss." Hours later, the leads ask, "Why are you not doing web tickets? The queue looks awful." I told them Ed wants me taking calls. I've never seen so many leads walk over to Ed's desk and demand that he put me back on web tickets. Ed came back over and said, "Hey, we're going to need you to jump back on web tickets." I replied, "Sure thing, boss." However, these are just the highlights. In reality, every day was an antagonistic fight between myself and Ed. I just wanted to do my job and I was the best at it, according to all numbers. And my friends at work were all top performers as well, and we formed a bit of a bond, even meeting after work for cookouts, going to each other's parties, etc. But Ed had it out for us. I loved working for Safeway. I took pride in what I did and I loved seeing those high numbers, but working with Ed was petty and infuriating. He would call me to his desk for no reason at all, fish for a reason to write me up, and luckily, our new business and policies are now better than him and would explain and highlight written facts for him to interpret. He would dismiss me back to my desk and now I was worked up and frustrated and all I wanted to do was sit down and do my job. He began to do this with all my fields. The last straw was that I'd found religion and told my boss I needed Sundays off for church. I was going to be a Sunday school teacher at my church. He said no. I filled out a religious accommodation form to HR, something they offer for employees like myself. The form was in the final stages of being approved until Ed came out of nowhere and said, "I've changed my mind, you can have Sundays off." He essentially switched my shift, which made my religious accommodation form invalid. After 1 week, he held a mandatory shift bid, and suddenly I did not have Sundays off again. So I put in my 2 weeks, and he asked me, "So you're gonna quit because God is more important to you than this job, huh?" I said, "Absolutely." A mass exodus kicked off, and all of his top employees started to find new jobs. As his department was bleeding, he walked up to my friend Mario, who still works there, and asked, "Why are so many people leaving?" Mario replied, "We don't want to play games, Ed, we just want to do our jobs." Ed asked, "How many more people are leaving?" Mario replied, "I cannot tell you, but if I was going to show you the numbers on my fingers, I would need both hands." Ed gulped and said, "Is there anything I can do to make you stay? Do you want anything? A coffee or a soda?" And Mario stated calmly, "Just leave me alone and let me do my job." I heard from then on, Ed sat quietly at his desk and let employees work. I would go on to be a manager and work directly under VPs and CEOs, so I was doing just fine. And the next one is another awesome malicious compliance story, which is titled, "Something added in my contract to restrict me was something I later used to help me." So when I first joined a particular company, they had a number of offices in the nearby city. Because they wanted to essentially force us to work in whichever city office they wanted, they added a line to my contract saying that I could work anywhere in the city. Years later, and those offices have gone, there's just one left. That clause is removed from contracts for anyone else starting at the company. Then our department gets outsourced to another company, and as part of a UK law which makes transfer of people between companies easier, they have to take my contract as is, which they did, and they then decided to reallocate many of the people to other parts of their company throughout the country, expecting you to commute sometimes hours away. Except me. That part of my contract, still present, meant that they could only send me somewhere in the local city, and they had no other offices there, so I stayed. Years later, I'm insourced back and the company tries to send me to the other side of the country for a few days to work. I tap on my contract once again. And yeah guys, there's something refreshing about being able to use a contract clause initially added to force me to do something for them against the company. That is malicious compliance at its finest. Someone in the comments said, "Bloody love TOPE. When the IT support contract I worked on was picked up by an American company, it came as something of a shock to them. They started off by handing out all of their contracts, which were quickly returned unsigned and told to check the law. They find that most of the engineers were already on contracts they couldn't change, including a few that went back over 20 years, originally written by companies that had long gone. It caused them some headache as each person had different contracted hours, holiday time, overtime pay, etc. Well, one thing that was not in most contracts was out-of-hours weekend work, which previously was paid time and a half or double time for Sundays. When they needed bodies to move desks and computers over a weekend and were told we will get time off in lieu, they were shocked when everyone turned it down. And yeah guys, thanks for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.